Hi there, my name is Sean Longest and I'm the product lead for Conductor4SQL. In today's video we'll be taking you through one of our most popular features, and that is the Conductor4SQL data synchronization. As always, please be sure to watch these videos in full screen and at the best resolution so you can see everything that I'm doing. Alright, what is Conductor4SQL data synchronization? Well, Conductor4SQL gives your organization the ability to sync data for uniform databases for unlimited number of instances or databases across large distances in real time and at the lowest level of data. So what you really mean by that is you might be in an organization where you have the same database running all over the place, all over the country. So you might have the same applications running all over the country. You might have point of sale systems. It could be anything like that. But you have an application and at each place where you're running SQL, you've got a database that looks pretty much the same or identical to the other databases out there. So what we can do with Conductor4SQL is you can point Conductor at this very large SQL environment, hundreds or thousands of instances, and tell it to synchronize that data in real time from your remote instances of SQL out there. Conductor will then push that data and consolidate it at the Conductor4SQL central server in one table per table. So what I mean by that is, let's give the example. If you have a point of sale system out there and you have a sales table and you want to know your sales information across all your retail outlets in real time in one instance of SQL, you can use Conductor4SQL data synchronization. We will sync at the lowest level the exact inserts, updates, deletes happening on that sales table in real time from all your instances of SQL out there to one instance of SQL, potentially at head office. We will consolidate all the information into a single table, so it's very easy to use and do whatever you want to do with it. This allows for many business advantages. You can start using real-time BI, which is true real-time BI, without having to wait for the normal ETL flows and so forth, or real-time business activity monitoring. If you want to be alerted or aware of anything happening in your organization across all your SQL dispersed databases in real time, you can do that through Conductor data synchronization as well. It allows for real-time data consolidation, so you've got a complete view of your organization's data. Whatever your most popular applications are that your business uses, imagine you use those across countries. You've got many sites and locations that all use the same applications all over the world, and you want to consolidate all that data into one instance of SQL to do whatever you want with it. Conductor4SQL can do that very, very easily. It's also been designed from the ground up and optimized for slow and erratic networks. So if you have locations dispersed across the world and those networks can be slow or they can be very erratic, Conductor4SQL is definitely the answer for you. We use a tremendous amount of data compression, and we built everything on top of the guaranteed message delivery architecture as with all our other features. So it means if sites go down or networks go down or infrastructure goes down, it doesn't matter. As soon as the issue is resolved, we will carry on syncing that data in real time with no human intervention required, which is very different to a lot of other data replication or synchronization technologies out there. Typically they need a lot of administration, and if things go down they need to be looked after and actioned. Conductor will just auto-correct itself wherever possible. Also, we've seen other instances where other data syncing technologies don't work so well because they just can't handle the volumes of data across the slow networks. We use a tremendous amount of optimization and compression, and we found that we can move data volumes that just typically cannot be moved with other tools. Right, so let's jump into the demo. Back to the Conductor4SQL user interface, which you're becoming accustomed to, I'm sure. So if you want to sync data with our tool, how do you go about it? So the first thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you on our central server that we don't have any data. So if I run that query, this is now on the Conductor4SQL central server, that one installation where typically a head office or a data center that can communicate to the rest of your SQL environment. You can see that table is empty. So let's say you want to start syncing that table. First thing you would do is you would go to the Manage Data Synchronization tab on the left-hand side menu, and you would go to Manage Data Sync Tables. What this Manage Data Sync Tables is, it's just metadata. It's just where you define the tables you potentially would like to sync from your SQL Server environment. So let me give the example of a point of sale system or applications running at retail outlets across the country. Perhaps you want to sync your sales, your stock tables in real time to have a complete view of what's happening in your organization. You would come here and you would add those tables. So I've already added one, but I'm going to show you adding another one. So let's say I want to add one more table that I potentially want to sync. Remember, this doesn't actually sync the data, it's just the metadata of the table. You could choose one of your client instances of SQL, choose the database, choose the schema, and I'm going to choose a table. You can choose multiple tables here that you might want to sync, and you would click Save. And what happens at that point is Conductor4SQL will actually create that database and that table on that central instance of SQL for you. So it can start syncing the data from all your remote SQL sites to this one instance of SQL in real time. So Conductor's now actually gone and created that table on the central server for us. The next thing you might want to do is create a configuration. A configuration is just a grouping of tables. So if you want to sync many tables, 100 tables across many different instances of SQL, you don't have to go and define each table every time. You can just group all the tables in a config and just apply the config, which I'll show to you just now. So I'm just going to give this table config a name. You can give it a description. Say save. So I've created the config. If I click on the config, I can now add tables to it. Obviously, I'm only seeing 2 tables here because I've only defined 2 on the previous screen, but I'm going to add both those tables to the config. As you can imagine, this could be 100 tables. So no, it's been successfully created. So what this table is, it's a transactional table that exists at all my other instances of SQL that I control with Conductor4SQL. So there's data for this table out at all those other instances. If you watched the previous videos, you would have seen if I go to Client Overview, I'm controlling 5 instances of SQL with Conductor in this demo tutorial. But this can be easily hundreds or thousands. Each one of these is potentially, imagine a retail outlet running a SQL database, and it's got sales data happening there, transactions happening in real time, and I want to synchronize all that data into my one central instance, which could be at head office, for example. It's important to note we support all versions of SQL 2005 Service Pack 3 upwards, so we can consolidate data across many different versions of SQL very easily as well. So the next step is, now that you've defined the tables you want to sync, jumping back to the data synchronization tabs, there's 2 ways you can do this. The first way I'm going to show you is the Assign Client Data Sync screen. This allows you to configure data synchronization at the lowest level. So you can choose an individual instance of SQL and an individual table or tables you want to sync. So I'm going to select that one instance of SQL and I'm going to sync that one table. And I'm going to say save. And that's just a confirmation box. So this lets you allow to configure at the lowest level. What's also very nice is you can very easily pick and choose to sync different tables from different instances of SQL without having to define different configurations, or for example in replication you'd have to define different subscriptions and publications. You don't need to do that with Conductor4SQL. So I'm going to say yes, I want to sync the data and start. And we get a green light. So now, if I run that same query, all that instance of SQL's data is now at central. We can consolidate the data for all of these instances in one table at central we have a unique column that we add. So when Conductor4SQL creates this table for you on the central database, we add one unique column that's used for our internal system purposes. So you can see this one is a number uniquely identifying that instance of SQL. This way we're able to combine all the data for any tables into one table at central, and you can still uniquely identify which data belongs to which instance of SQL. So you can see there, I've just got 65 rows. It's not a very big table. But now I'm going to add more instances of SQL. I'm going to sync this data from more instances of SQL. So I've just done it now at the lowest level for one instance for one table. The next option screen tab is Group Data Sync. This allows you to pick a grouping of instances of SQL as well as a config of tables, thereby enabling you to easily and very quickly sync data for many instances of SQL for many tables. So I'm going to go to Assign Group Data Sync. I'm going to choose my SQL Express group, which holds a whole bunch of instances of SQL. I'm going to choose my SAP POS tables config, which holds all those tables, and I'm going to say Apply Config and Start. And everything goes green. And now if I query my table at Central, you can see many more rows. But all the data is now coming in. This works similarly to transactional replication in SQL Server. The first thing we'll do is actually go get a snapshot of all the data that's at that instance of SQL and bring it up to Central. And from now on, we are just feeding the data in real time as it changes immediately. So if I do a row count again on the Central instance, you'll see there's 383 rows on the bottom right there. I'm now going to connect to one of those other remote instances of SQL and insert some data, and then run the query at Central immediately again, and you can see it's 386 rows. So it's real-time data feeds at the lowest level. We mimic row by row, insert, update, deletes across tables in real time. So you can imagine the possibilities. You can be monitoring these tables on Central in your head office and have a complete real-time picture of what this data looks like across all your outlets countrywide or worldwide immediately. The other great benefit, as I mentioned, is we use extreme compression. We can move data a lot faster than other technologies, and it's completely guaranteed and resilient. So if networks go down and servers go down, as soon as they come back up, the data will sync immediately. There's no manual intervention required. No human beings have to monitor things that are failing and correct them. Our technology will take care of that immediately. Once again, as I said, there's that unique column. So if I run this query, I can uniquely identify data sets now in that table just for a certain instance of SQL. It's very easy to isolate the data for any one instance of SQL, even though it's all being consolidated for you into a single table. Coming up in other videos, we'll show you our reverse data synchronization. So you are able to push data from the central instance of SQL to all your entire SQL environment, which is great for master data or configuration type data, maintaining it from easily from one instance of SQL across massive SQL environments. Also coming up in a later video is our data sync disaster recovery. So because we can sync data like this in real time, also optionally, if you have a disaster scenario and you've lost all your data somewhere, we'll have it, and we can leverage our data sync and our reverse data sync technology to push that missing data back to your instances of SQL should you require it. And those will be coming up in later videos. So I hope you enjoyed watching. Data sync is a very powerful feature that can enable your organization in many ways, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.